Hello everyone. Today we'll be going through the session on etiquettes while using social media. We all live in a virtual world, and today the Gen Z, that is people who are born after 1995, whom we call as digital natives or Facebook generation, spend most of the time on social media and the virtual world. Hence, we as human creatures, we are very comfortable using social norms or following social norms and customs in a physical environment. It becomes a little hard to follow it when we are online. The present session will focus on certain etiquettes that we can adapt when we are online so that we can enhance our personality and be polite and respectful during our online behaviors. Well, what are etiquettes? I'm sure many of you would have heard of people saying you need to follow the etiquettes in the classroom, you need to follow certain corporate etiquettes at your workplace. Now, etiquettes are certain norms or behaviors which you are expected to follow at a certain location or a situation. Now, what about etiquettes while using social media? So, this session will give an answer to all of it. So, the contents of the present session would be as follows. We would have an introduction to what is netiquette, why we need to follow netiquettes, 10 basic rules, and then some takeaways towards the end. Yeah, what is netiquette? Netiquette is a portmanteau. Portmanteau are words which are formed by forming two words. Just like we have brunch, which is a combination of breakfast and lunch. Just like we have smog, smoke and fog. Similarly, we have netiquette, which is a portmanteau word of a combination of net or networking and etiquette, which is formed as netiquette. It refers to some socially acceptable rules that we need to follow for our online conduct. Now, when I say netiquette, what does it comprise of? Netiquette includes everything, starting from the way you present yourself, what are self-presentation standards, certain behavior norms. Behaviors, when I say, the way you respond to a message, the way you reply to a message, the way you write certain texts, all of these are considered as behavior norms and accepted forms of expression. So, netiquette comprises of all of these factors. Now, the question is, we already have etiquettes, and why are netiquettes and why are these important? Now, just as etiquettes are important in our physical world, netiquettes or etiquettes to be followed on the online world are also equally important. Now, netiquette aims to create a positive and a respectful online environment where everyone feels comfortable and can communicate effectively. Now, with the rise of online messaging platform, most of our communications today are happening on the virtual world. We send emails, we send text messages, or on Twitter, on Facebook, on WhatsApp. We use a lot of online messaging platforms, and this has led to an implicit agreement on global communication standards. Because of widespread use of online messaging platforms, it becomes mandatory that we have certain standards or certain norms that control us. Netiquette and digital citizenship are closely connected concepts. Before we delve into understanding the netiquettes, it is important we understand what digital citizenship is. We have already seen what netiquette is. Now, digital citizenship, which indicates or which means that we need to be responsible citizens. I'm sure all of you would have studied in Indian Constitution the rights of citizenship. Similarly, when we are on a digital world, there are certain norms that we need to follow, maybe with regard to privacy, maybe with regard to intellectual property rights. There are certain norms that we need to follow on digital world and be responsible digital citizens. Hence, netiquettes help us to become responsible digital citizens. Now, Digital citizenship refers to responsibly using technology and internet. I'm sure all of you are aware about a lot of cyber crimes that happen, and that is why we have something called a cyber policing now, which takes care of our internet behaviors, our online behaviors. And both these concepts emphasize the importance of responsible and respectful behavior online. What you are physically, the same responsibility you need to shoulder even when you are dealing with people online. So that is why here are certain set of netiquettes that we all need to follow. Now, if I have to talk about netiquettes, there may be hundreds of netiquettes, and based on the place that you come from, based on the audience that you are, there may be different netiquettes that you have to follow. Certain group of people may follow certain netiquettes, while certain groups may have some other different forms of netiquettes. But what I am trying to focus here are some 10 basic rules of netiquette, which in general, irrespective of what genre you come from or what group of class that you study, these are certain common, maybe an umbrella guidelines that we could say that we could all follow for showing good digital behaviors. Now, the 10 basic netiquettes or 10 basic rules of netiquette, starting with the first one being using proper grammar, spelling and punctuation, avoiding all caps, maybe being respectful, thinking before posting, keeping personal information private, responding promptly, use appropriate tone, use appropriate humor, being mindful of cultural differences, and be a good digital citizenship. These are 10 basic rules of netiquettes. We will be looking into each of one in detail. So let us see what the first one. Rule number 1 is using proper spelling, grammar and punctuation. Remember, when you are online, your body language, your tone, your expressions are all lacking. Hence, what matters is your words. The way you put across the words, your spellings, your grammar play a very important role, and they represent you. Hence, avoid heavy slangs. Unusual acronyms. We see a lot of Gen Z using a lot of acronyms, like you have FAIK, as far as I know, or maybe MMB, which stands for Message Me Back, NTN, No Thanks Needed, or OMG, oh my gosh, or BRB, Be Right Back. Now, these are certain acronyms which generally all tend to use when you are in an informal communication. But remember that it's fine in an informal communication, but you need to be very mindful as to with whom you are messaging, whom are you texting. If you're texting your teacher, if you're texting your superiors, if you're texting someone in a more respectable position, you need to avoid heavy slangs, you need to avoid unusual acronyms, abbreviations or words or alternate spellings. Sometimes we use shortcuts, right? We use a lot of shortcuts when we are texting, when we are messaging, which is understood by a particular generation of people, but not everyone may be familiar with that. I think an incident, if I had to say, someone once messaged EOD and the person didn't understand what EOD meant. And then she was struggling in order to understand what is EOD. EOD stood for end of the day. I'll get back to you, EOD. Now that person who received the message was not familiar with this acronym. So it's very natural for you to communicate this way with your generation of people. But then when you are in a professional setting, it may come across as you are being very impatient or immature. Hence, try avoiding these acronyms and also alternate spellings, short forms. Try to use the complete words in its right sense. I hope all of you are clear with rule number 1. Moving on to rule number 2, avoid using all caps. Have you ever experienced or have you ever received a message in which everything is caps? How does that visually look? What is the visual appeal of it? You feel, oh my God, it's like all caps indicates yelling. It's like making a loud noise. If I have to look at it from an online perspective, all caps indicates, why are you yelling at me? Generally avoid it. So use capitalization, but use it sparingly. Understand the context, the audience, and you could use. Otherwise, avoid using all caps. Rule number 3, be respectful. Now, you need to know that just because the person is not in front of you, you can be the way you are without any kind of social filters or social filters at your worst. Be careful. If you cannot say anything to the person offline, do not say that online. Treat others with respect, kindness and consideration. Avoid making any insulting or derogatory statements even if it's in a jest. Many a times we feel when we are in online, we tend to put across our emotions in a very unfiltered way. We tend to be rude, we tend to be aggressive, the way the words that we choose or the way the emojis that we use sometimes may be very, hurting to the other person. The same message or the same, comments that you put on social media just because of, the reactions that you put, not a response, but a reaction. Reactions come very abruptly, they are very sudden, while responses are more thought-driven one. So what happens when you react? So when you're putting across your verbal vomiting of your emotional status of mind, you tend to sometimes hurt the other person. So see that the words that you use. When you text someone, start with a greeting. Even if you have something to say for the other person for not doing something, there's a tone that you could, follow even the way you text your message. So keep in mind that if you would not treat the person the same way offline, do not treat the person otherwise when you are online. Rule number 4, think before posting. I come across a lot of forwards in groups, especially random forwards. You're bombarded with so many messages, so many forwards, so many videos, such long lengthy messages. It's so annoying sometimes to receive this. And it's a very inhuman, very natural response, and that urge to forward it immediately when you get something. There's so much of temptations that I get a message and I immediately need to forward it. I should be the first one to forward it and all of that. Rule number 4, to have a good social presence is think before posting. Pause and reflect before posting or sharing any content online. Consider how others may perceive it. You are sending it to others or you are commenting with something. It's like leaving your digital footprint. It remains forever. So be very mindful and think before posting. You could, connect it with this acronym called as THINK. First one, T stands for is it true? Fact check. Without fact check, do not forward anything. Sometimes I have received messages of requesting for blood donors. The message is maybe 3-4 months old and which is still circulating. The patient would have already been discharged, but the message is still circulating. Check if the message is true before forwarding. Don't be reactive in forwarding the messages. Check, because nobody likes to be titled as being misinformed and then getting into embarrassment. So be very careful and check the message. Fact check before forwarding. It could be about, I gave you an example of messages which forwards for blood donors. It could be about anything, about any facts. Rather than regretting later for being misinformed, always fact check before we forward it. Second, H stands for is it helpful? I would take all the three together. I stands for inspiring and N stands is it necessary? Now, be very careful when you forward a message. Rather than forwarding it into every group that you are into, check if this information that I'm putting on my social media, check the information that I'm trying to post, is it helpful for this particular group? Would it be of any use for this particular group? Would this group be benefited by it? Is it something inspiring to this particular my family group? Does it make sense to forward this in my family group? Does it make sense if I forward it in my students group? Okay. Is it fine if I post it in my school group? Check. Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Only if it makes sense to post it in that group, you can post it. Otherwise, please hold on to your temptations. Do not be in an urge to just randomly forward the messages. Maybe sometimes the other person may not open the message, might not read the message, and you may tend to feel bad about it. Respect people's boundaries. They may not open the message, they may not have seen the message because they may feel it is not important, or they might have no time to open it. So respect people's boundaries. K, is it kind? Now, certain informations when you are posting, check, is it going to hurt someone's emotions? Is it going to hurt someone's feelings? Many a times I see the students taking some random pictures where the individual is not ready, and then posting it on social media, and that person being trolled and ridiculed, and a lot of body shaming happening. So see that your post should not emotionally hurt anyone, should not be emotionally damaging anyone. So be kind when you post something. I think we have heard of lots of stories and lots of incidents where people have posted randomly certain comments on Twitters which have left an emotional scar on the people. And as I told you, the digital footprints are not easy to erase. Once there, it is there permanently. So it's difficult to erase it. Hence, before making a emotional damage to someone, think, does it make sense? Would it hurt someone? Would it, create some kind of problem to someone? And then post. So rule number 4 says, think before posting. Rule number 5, keep personal information private. Now, one of the qualities of a responsible digital citizenship is you need to respect the privacy of others by not sharing their personal informations or private messages without their consent. It is only sometimes certain messages are sent which is only to your eyes. Certain emails are sent which is specifically to you. Without the consent of the person, do not share it with anybody. It could be an email. Maybe if they would have sent an emotional email to you. Do not send it or forward it to others without confirming it with the sender. Confirm with the sender, is it okay? I forward this email to somebody. I recently saw a post of a person who had shared their resignation letter. It was a resignation letter which the staff had written a resignation letter and which was sent to the employer. The resignation letter was almost viral. It was there on all social media platforms. How? Was it with the consent of the sender? Now, when we do that without confirming with the sender, we are actually breaking the privacy of the person, and which is not ethically right. Use BCC. You might have seen in your email to, and then you have something called as CC, and then you have something called as BCC. Now, it so happens that sometimes you have a class group and you need to send emails to a lot of people together. Or maybe you are inviting, different people for different competitions or something like that, and you are sending a lot of emails together. Now, you do not want the recipients to know whom it is sent and to whom all it is sent. So it is always better to use BCC, that is blind carbon copy, so that the recipients do not know that to whom all it is shared, because you do not know the social dynamics of the group that you are sending in. Maybe somebody would not want their email IDs to be known to others. Hence, maintain a BCC when you are sending mass mails. Also, this trend now, tagging people. Now, ask someone before tagging, because sometimes people may not like, tagging for some unflattering photography or something. So they may not like. So if you are tagging the person, ask, is it okay if I could tag you? Posting someone's picture without their consent can be a huge breach. You take random pictures. Not everyone is comfortable on a social media platform. Not everyone would want their photos to be circulated or being seen by a lot of people. It could be a private time. It could be for a very closed circle that they have gone. Posting these pictures without the consent is a huge breach. So see that next time when you're trying to post the photographs where it's not only about you, but there are a group of people, ask the consent of everyone, and only then you can post the photos. By this, by doing this, you tend to be a little more responsible. Don't share any social media contact without their consent. Sharing someone's Twitter account to someone, or it could be maybe you share an Instagram account and then you share it to someone else in your contact. This person may not be okay with that. So ask. It's all about just taking a consent of the other person, and there is no harm in doing so. If the person is fine with it, it's okay. If the person doesn't want, respect it. Respect their privacy. Doxing someone is a serious offense. Now, what is doxing? Doxing is looking for certain information online, certain private information online, like you're checking for this details of this person online, and you are surfing for it, where you get to know about the person's personal email ID, or you have their phone number or their home address. It's a very personal information which is there in a particular site, and you would not intentionally do it, but accidentally you may be doing it, and then you tend to share it on a public platform. You would be searching it for some serious business, but then it is some very private information which is not on a public domain. You are looking for it, and if at all you happen to get it, do not share it on a public domain. This is called as doxing, which is again a very serious offense. So, just as privacy is important in the physical world, privacy is the same in the digital world too. Moving on to rule 6, respond promptly. Has it ever happened that you have sent an email to someone and they didn't respond to you immediately? What happened to you then? Do you get angry? Do you become restless? It is quite annoying, right? When people doesn't respond to your chat, or people don't respond to your emails quickly. You might have seen that you have texted them on WhatsApp and you can see the blue tick, but the person has not responded to you. It's annoying, right? Now, respond promptly. When we say respond to the messages and emails promptly to respect others' time and avoid misunderstanding. But it is not necessary to respond immediately. You don't need to respond immediately. Doesn't mean, when I say promptly, doesn't mean that you are in your work and you get a text message and you immediately have to respond to it. It is not necessary. But also not responding it for quite some time, forever not responding it again, is also not a good behavior. Hence, what we need to do is respond. When I say respond promptly, respect the person's time. If you have a message, if you have received a message and it's a little long, lengthy message, and right now you do not have time to respond to it, you can just put a message stating that I will go through the message and I will respond to you once I become free. At least you give an acknowledgement that you have received the message and you would revert to them sometime later. If you feel the message is too long or it is too lengthy and really you do not have time, you can respond it later, and you can put across to the other person that keep the messages crisp by highlighting the important aspects, because I may be running short of time, or I may not be able to read and respond to a long lengthy message. So kindly keep your messages crisp and short. You could mention it. Now, respond to the messages and emails promptly. Keep in mind the context of the message, the importance of the message, and the time frame of the message. If it needs to be responded immediately, please do it, because the person may be needing a response immediately. If it is something which is not very urgent, you can prioritize it accordingly. But there is a time frame that you could keep, maybe a week's time, or maybe depending upon the urgency of the situation, you can have it within 2 days or 3 days. But if you have time, kindly acknowledge, stating you will revert. So by doing this, you can avoid misunderstandings that the other person might have for you of not responding to that message. Now, rule number 7 is use an appropriate tone. Now, what happens is, when you are in a face-to-face communication, generally you have your expressions, you have your body language, your tone is also heard, and people may able to understand you. Now, what happens in an online communication? It is lacking all of this, right? It is lacking all of this. They can't see you, they can't see your eyes, they can't see your body language, nor they can hear your vocal expressions. Hence, the tonality of your message, the choice of words that you do, See that you use an appropriate tone. Use a friendly and a positive tone in online communication. Avoid sarcasm, negativity that can be misinterpreted in a text-based communication. See, this is a greatest disadvantage when people cannot see you in person, and sometimes there are more chances that the person may be judgmental and may take your messages the other way around. Hence, use a very friendly and a very positive tone. When I say friendly, it means a little lighter one. Doesn't mean very casual friend, what the interaction or the tone that you use while talking to your friends. At a professional setting, you can use a very friendly and a positive tone. Whenever I see people messaging directly, okay, what time is the class, okay, or where are you now? Maybe if it's a first message that you're sending to the person, you can share a greeting. Good morning, may I know that would there be a class today? Okay, you understand to whom you are messaging, the age of the person, the position of the person, and accordingly use a friendly and a positive tone in your online communication. Your words can set your tone, your words can tell a lot about yourself. So choose an appropriate emotional tone even in the choice of words that you make. 8th one. Now use appropriate humor. Now when I say use appropriate humor, this is majorly when you are in a group. You have different groups, and sometimes what happens, just in an emotional charged situation, you tend to pass some comment, you may pass some humor, which may not be appreciated by everybody who is there in the group. So use humor sparingly and appropriately. You need to know the context. You need to know your audience. Who is everyone in your audience would be somebody who could appreciate the joke that you passed on. Maybe sometimes a humor could also be a sarcastic humor. Maybe a humor could be a dark humor. So use humor sparingly. Always keep in mind who's the group that you are in and is it appropriate. Maybe sometimes you don't even know the person in a very friendly way. Okay, it's just a professional contact. It's just a WhatsApp group of a particular group, which is someone who is attending a conference, and then there's a particular group. So in a emotionally charged moment, you may pass on, you may put some humor, you may put some jokes, you may crack a joke on a person. As I told you previously, the emotional scar your online communication can have, you need to bear in mind what this humor would lead to. Hence, keep the context and the audience in mind before you use any kind of humor. Now, rule number 9 is be mindful of the cultural differences. Just as in our social world, we are a group of people of different cultural differences, different caste, creed, age, color. It's a multicultural environment, right? Hence, when you are posting something or when you are sharing something in a particular group, respect the cultural differences when communicating with people from different backgrounds. Don't make some kind of prejudiced beliefs being put up in a group, okay? Or use certain very stereotypical statements that you post, which can hurt the sentiments of a person belonging to a particular group. It could hurt their social beliefs. It could hurt their cultural beliefs that they carry. So do not make any assumptions or generalizations about any cultural. Understand that you come from a multicultural environment, and there are people from diverse backgrounds who appreciate diverse practices, who appreciate diverse cultures, diverse philosophies. Hence, be very respectful and be aware that there are a group of people together. Be mindful about anything that you post which could hurt the sentiments of another group. Rule number 10 is be a good digital citizen. Now, many a times we see someone's photo on the DP and we just screenshot it. We see someone's status, we screenshot it and we copy paste that on our stories or our posts without taking the consent of the person. It's almost like breaching a contract. Respect the intellectual property rights. Give the credit when using others' content. This is something which we give a lot of importance to now. It could be in the academic sector, it could be in any sector now. There's a lot of importance given to intellectual property rights, the content. I'm sure as students you would have all heard of plagiarisms, all your assignments, your dissertations, all go through this plagiarism check. Why plagiarism check? So that you do not use others. See, because in this virtual world, it's so easy to take someone's, take someone's information or take someone's work and, without giving them any kind of credit. Hence, it's to showcase a good digital citizenship. Respect the intellectual property rights. Give credit to the user when you're using this content, and use technology very responsibly and very ethically. Nothing is bad, it's just how we use it. Even the virtual world, we talk about a lot, when people have a stereotypical belief about the disadvantages of the social world or the social media platforms. See, it is all up to us. Our usage, nothing is good or bad in its own, it is the usage that we do. Hence, showcase good digital citizenship, showcase responsible digital citizenship, so that you respect the other people's rights. Now, this was all about 10 basic netiquettes that we could all practice when we are in a digital world. Practicing this doesn't make us something different, something unique, but practicing this makes us a more responsible citizens. Citizens not just in a physical world, but also responsible citizens in a digital world. Now, before I move on to the takeaways, I would like to highlight this point. Learn to forgive. Something very, very important. Now, these netiquettes, these internet etiquettes, what we are talking about, is not something that we have grown up with, right? We are all in the process of learning the different etiquettes or the different netiquettes, So we are all learning, So we have not grown up with this thing of, understanding the netiquettes. We are all in the process of learning these netiquettes. And how do we get acquainted with this? We would get acquainted with this as we go on in this process. Hence, just in case if someone commits a mistake, learn to forgive them. As we told, it's not easy to forget any digital, error that we do, because it is something that is permanent, okay? But even when someone makes an error, let's learn to forgive. By forgiving, we could be more compassionate. Only when we are more compassionate, we could expect the same compassion when we too commit certain errors. So forgive errors when people make mistakes and tell them what is the right method, so that next time they are more mindful of using the same technique. With this, we move to the key takeaways that we discussed in present session. So let's do a quick recap of all that we did. We started with understanding the word netiquette. Netiquette was a portmanteau word. It was a combination of network and etiquette. And why netiquette? Netiquettes are nothing but they refer to guidelines for appropriate behaviors while communicating online. Remember, just as physical communication is important, there are certain norms for our physical world. Having norms for our digital world is also equally important. That is why the concept of netiquette has emerged over a period of time. Netiquette covered several areas which I discussed in a form of 10 basic guidelines. Now these areas included the way you respect people, the privacy that you maintain, the language, your tone and the response time. All these things probably you remember all the points that we discussed in our 10 guidelines. Netiquette is essential because it promotes respectful communication. I am highlighting this point. Anything that we cannot do with a person offline, we cannot do it online as well. So practice respectful communication. Good netiquette is a part of good digital citizenship. We all have, right, fundamental rules for citizenship. What are our citizenship rights and regulations and all of that. Similarly, good netiquette is a part of digital citizenship. And which is responsible use of technology and internet. Hence, be responsible when you are on a digital world, because you are leaving your digital footprints. Thank you.